What's going on, everybody? We're back. It's the Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 34 on this Thursday, November 9th, 2023, Oklahoma, West Virginia week in the great state of Oklahoma. Josh Callaway, Collin Kennedy, James E. Jackson, Tom Green will be along in just a little bit. CK, how you doing, man? It got cold all of a sudden out of nowhere. Is it like that down in your neck of the woods too?
A little bit chillier than I'm used to. I was going to mow the lawn, enjoy the sun, and now here I am in a hoodie, got the sweats on, throwing me for a loop. But hey, this game coming this weekend, Josh, it's going to throw people for a loop. This is a big game, a lot bigger than I think people are expecting.
Yeah, sneaky huge, I think. And we'll get into it. Obviously, this is our preview show, but Oklahoma needs this game bad. Big time bad. A lot on the line this weekend. Anthracite uniforms are being busted out against the Mountaineers. So a lot to look forward to as the Mountaineers make their way to the Palace this weekend. Third to last game of the year, second to last home game. So looking forward to it. And, of course, on Thursdays, our game preview days. We're going to break down the game, lay it all out for you. Us too, obviously. And like I said, James and Tom in just a little bit. We're all going to pick the game, what we're watching for, all that good stuff. We'll also hit a little bit of basketball on the way out. Both openers in the books on Monday, both impressive starts for both Jenny Baranchek and Porter Moser's squads. And, of course, as always on Thursdays, we've got some recruiting updates to hit as well, and that's where we'll start. CK, last week on the show, we talked about Marcus James, the Carl Albert 2025 linebacker. He's going to announce his commitment. You know, I was there at Carl Albert. And then they pulled a little hezzy hay on us and busted out a second one. Trine Washington also committed at the same time. Wide receiver / tight end was kind of how he described himself afterwards. We talked to him, you know, where are they looking at you? He said primarily as a wide receiver, tight end. Joe John Finley's been one of his primary recruiters. So these guys, if you didn't see it, first off, I think I'm going to lay it in the podcast because Marcus James commits, and then he says, and I'm bringing someone with me, and Trine comes out from like the side of the room and puts on his own OU hat. I'm going to lay that in the podcast right here.
And without further ado, I'll be committing to the University of And I'm bringing somebody with me. Yo, Snaps.
That way people can see it, and if you're listening, can hear it because it was kind of cool. You don't really see that very often. A little double action there at Carl Albert. That's now 4 Titans commits on Carl Albert's roster currently, with obviously Kevin Sperry and Xavier Robinson looped in there as well. Collin, talk about both of these players and just kind of what went into landing both of them and what you've heard about the Washington angle of it, as he kind of, Marcus James has been one that, we were looking at. He announced his commitment time. We were eyeballing it and ready for it. And Trine Washington, we were ready for that too, but not, obviously it wasn't on the schedule like Marcus James was. What kind of went into all that from your perspective?
Yeah, it was funny because they told James D. Jackson, who's coming later in the show, hey, we're thinking about doing this that day. And I remember James called me. I was down in Houston covering a game. We're talking through the plan. We're working through the P's and the Q's. And then naturally, both of you guys went out there. And I'm sitting in the parking lot at Cedar Hill High School outside of Longhorn Stadium, getting ready to go cover a couple of OU offers along the offensive line out there for them. And I'm waiting to publish the story. Now, keep in mind, it had been since James talked to Trine and Marcus that we had worked through that plan. So there's still kind of is it going to happen for sure on that day? We knew it was a possibility. They had told us it was in the works. And I still remember I'm sitting in the parking lot and you text me, all right, go ahead and publish Marcus James. I hit publish, hit the tweet, commit alert. Everyone goes and has their fun. And then as soon as I'm done with that, you text and Trine too. And the mini anxiety attack that I had sitting in the front seat of my truck being like, are we sure? Like, is this for real happening? Because I can't see anything.
Right.
Keep in mind, they're out boots on the ground trying to commit. I send it, and obviously we are here where we are today. This is a really fun little duo, man. And look, this is, I try to think of like a different angle to talk about here, right? Because you and I have touched on it with the fans for, I couldn't tell you how many episodes. This is in Oklahoma's best interest, I think, is what I want to bring up here. I don't know of a high school in the state of Oklahoma right now that it makes more sense to go all in on than Carl Albert, you know? And I think when you look at these two, Marcus is obviously going to be someone who potentially plays inside linebacker at 6'3", 6'4", 240 pounds. Trine is going to be that versatile, almost like Jumbo Dimitri Flowers type with a little bit of wide receiver ability mixed in. Two just fascinating players, and they both received their initial ratings at 24/7 Sports. Marcus James enters in as an 88, which is obviously 1 point away from the highest grade of 89 as a 3-star. And then Trine Washington gets an 89. I could see both of those guys getting into 4-star territory as more games get under their belt. The bottom line here is they enter in as 3-stars and they enter in as OU commits because they're both kind of blank canvases. They can both do a lot of different things. They obviously both can play on both sides of the ball. So really awesome gets for Oklahoma here. You got to be ecstatic right now if you're in that program. Adding all these guys, that makes it what? 5 out of 6 dudes with Power 5 offers at Carl Albert are now committed to Oklahoma. One more to go. Here he might be in Norman this weekend for this West Virginia game. But that aside, Trine Washington and Marcus James were 2 guys that, in my opinion, you had to go out and get. And Oklahoma does exactly that in surprising fashion.
Yeah, obviously referring to Tristan Haynes there. And I asked Marcus and Trine both afterward. We were talking to him, catching up with him for a few minutes. Tristan next. You know, I mean, you got their whole half your roster is going to OU at this point. And they both, smiled and said, "Oh yeah, he's next. We're working on him and things like that." So wild to have. I mean, if they get Tristan, even if they don't, but let's say they do for just the fun of it, that signing day ceremony next year. Well, I mean, it's an OU party to have that many guys at one high school in Oklahoma going to the University of Oklahoma, all scholarship, top level players is wild. It's not normal. So I think most fans realize that, but. Man, that's crazy. That's really, really special. And then obviously you have Xavier Robinson coming in this year, but the next season, all these guys in their senior year, they all know where they're going to play college football. That's going to be really, really cool. And I'm excited to see what kind of run they go on this year. Obviously, they're having an undefeated season right now. Last week of the high school football season was last week. They're in the playoffs now, starting tomorrow here in Oklahoma. And I'm excited to see what those Titans can do with Kevin Sperry leading the charge as they try to win a gold ball. Nothing new in those parts. So, fun team, fun program, and maybe not done, like we said, as far as OU commits goes. Another in-state guy, Alexander Shieldnight. If you're not familiar with him, really good players way out there in Wagner, which is one of the best, most underrated programs in the state of Oklahoma. Dominant defensive program in Oklahoma. He is a 3-star edge committing tomorrow. We haven't really talked about him a whole lot. He's committing on Friday before the Wagner's playoff opener. The Bulldogs certainly expect to be a team that's going to, make a deep run, and looks like Oklahoma is in good shape here. What are you hearing for Shieldnight in state as Oklahoma tries to again lock up some of the best players within the state lines?
Yeah, by the time this podcast publishes, I will probably have entered a 24/7 Sports crystal ball in favor of Oklahoma for Alexander Shieldnight. I really like where OU is here within this recruitment, and rightfully so. This is an in-state guy that behind the scenes Miguel Chavis has prioritized for quite a while, and for good reason. I mean, you look at this guy, about 6'3", 220-ish pounds, and I believe I saw something the other day. He may have set the all-time sack record at Wagner, so he's pretty good and an encouraging frame. A little bit of versatility as well. You can have him stand up edge rush. You can have him kick inside with his hand in the dirt. This is a player that Oklahoma has wanted quite honestly, for quite a while. And he kind of flies under the radar because he's Wagner, Oklahoma, kind of just doing his thing. But whenever that announcement comes and it's on its way, you got to like where Oklahoma stands. I think in his initial rating that he was recently receiving, 3-star player, graded out as an 86, top 12 in the state of Oklahoma, top 60 edge rusher in the country. Very strong chance that goes up. I think if you're Alexander Shieldnight, this is a real opportunity for you to springboard your career. One that's been promising. Like I mentioned, I mean, I believe he's the all-time sack record leader now at Wagner. You can take that to the SEC with an in-state program, and Miguel Chavis and Shieldnight have really hit it off here as well. So I think there's still some things to sift through, right? I know Arkansas has been in the mix, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, but OU to me is in best position as we get closer to this announcement. And so, like I mentioned, man, by the time people are listening to me say these words, they can probably go to 24/7 Sports and see a crystal ball from me for Oklahoma.
Yeah, like I said, Wagner, especially, I mean, they know defense out there. The 10-0 this year, certainly the favorites at the 4A level in the state of Oklahoma. This year, they've only allowed one team to score 15 or more all season, and that's the norm out there. They have a couple shutouts under their belt. They know defense out there, and like you said, sacks leader for that program. It's impressive, really, for any program to be the sack leader, but at that program, the way they've coached up defense especially in the last decade or so, is really, really impressive. So we'll keep an eye out for that. I don't know if James is going to make his way out there. I know he's kicking around. Wagner's pretty far, so we'll see. We'll see. But either way, Oklahoma 247sports.com on Friday. If that's the way it goes, you'll know about it. Text alert, all that good stuff. Become a VIP subscriber. You can have luxuries like that. So keep an eye out for that. Tomorrow, another one, Grant Brix. We talk about Grant Brix a ton. Obviously, it's been a topsy-turvy recruitment. It's been lots of kind of ins and outs. What's the latest here? Oklahoma fans are kind of, I think, are probably wondering, like, what is the deal? Are we getting this guy? Are we not getting this guy? As of November 9th, how are you feeling about Grant Brix, and what's the latest there?
Yeah, this is a really important moment coming up, Josh. I really do believe we're taking a step towards this thing being wrapped up whenever the weekend comes. He's scheduled to be in Norman for this West Virginia game. I checked in with someone this morning before hopping on the pod. That's still the plan, so good to know. But why is that so important? So, as we know, Grant Brix, time and again, he's been on commit watch. And Oklahoma has seemingly been close to closing on this guy, I would say a couple of times. But Nebraska has also felt really good at times in this recruitment, and so is Kansas State. I mean, Kansas State is the closest school to home. Nebraska, I believe, is like an hour 20 drive from where he lives out in Iowa as well. So those two programs had kind of battled. And then Oklahoma, yes, the distance is there, but he loves the strength and conditioning program at OU. He loves the direction of the program. Head of the SEC, he appreciates the offensive line development. And then, obviously, Bill Bedenbaugh, really strong relationship there as well. So I say all that to say this. Grant Brix, he was going to close things down. We now know he's obviously been trying to take in-season visits. He has been to Nebraska. A lot of people were like, okay, let's stay on the edge of our seats here. Nothing happened. He's now set for this Oklahoma visit this weekend. And honestly, Josh, there's a lot of people behind the scenes who think this is either visit 2 of 3 or this is the last visit he's going to take. Kansas State's trying to get him in town in Manhattan for the regular season finale. I don't remember exactly who they play in that game, but you know Manhattan is going to be rocking. And
yeah,
I know back then, I still haven't followed up on this in a while, but Grant's girlfriend was scheduled to go to Kansas State, or something to that effect. So there had also been that wrinkle to all of this there for a while, but that's kind of subsided recently, and I haven't dug further on it. But it sounds like that kind of advantage that Kansas State once had, not as prevalent for Brix or on his mind. And so, long story short, it sounds like Kansas State people, especially who at one point, very early on in this, had a lead with Brix, they're kind of nervous. And there's belief on the OU front, Nebraska front, the Kansas State front that whenever Brix arrives in Norman, depending how this visit goes, he will either just kind of carry on a status quo, or there's a very real opportunity for Oklahoma to try and shut this one down. So look, we've rode this roller coaster together, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like we've all kind of been through hell. And what I would echo is this is kind of where we're going to really figure out whether or not this recruitment is ending. Because if Grant Brix goes through the weekend and you don't hear any word, well, then this one could legitimately push to December. But Oklahoma's going to do everything in its power this weekend, specifically, to try and shut this one down. So put on those seatbelts again, folks. Yeah, we're headed for another dip. We'll see what happens when we get up to the other side.
Well, there you have it, OU fans. Brix going to be in town. You want to lock them down. Night game on Saturday night. Bring the juice. Bring the energy. This is how you help right there. So looking forward to that on Saturday. Unity uniforms. How do you feel about the anthracites, by the way? You fan? The gray unis?
I like them. I would say I like them. I think they're like, it's kind of weird to me that basketball, football, I believe both men's and women's basketball have anthracite uniforms, correct?
Yeah, and softball does too, but baseball does not. They don't utilize any kind of.
It's kind of strange that like that's the specific kind of color that OU just like, that's ours, you know, because I hadn't seen anthracite anywhere. But I like the football uniforms. I think the football, basketball, softball uniforms and anthracite are pretty cool. I would like to see a couple other alternates. I don't know. I mean, but it's a cool concept, and it's also like not only is it a good look, but there's a cool message behind it. So I'm for it. I like them.
Yeah, well, the most important thing, I think they're kind of cool too, and you're wearing them once a year, you know. But that clearly the players and recruits like them, because when recruits come take their photos, they pick those to wear like 90% of the time. And you ask any player, I asked Adam Sawchuk this week, you know, how do you feel? You like to wear the gray unis? And he was like, I mean, he lit up. Like, yes, pumped to wear them this weekend. Been waiting. He's like, it's the 10th game. He hadn't worn the alternates yet. I'm excited to wear them. So
I definitely like those. I like those more than the what were they calling those, like the woodshed, kind of like
bring the wood or roughneck or whatever the heck it is.
Yeah, I did that. Not doing it for me. So
yeah, I feel you. I feel you on that. As for the game, get your thoughts before I let you out of here. Oklahoma, West Virginia. The Sooners are actually a 13-point favorite as of right now, which feels big. West Virginia. How many people around the country realize West Virginia is 6-3? I don't know how many people do. Neil Brown was firmly on the hot seat. They're picked dead last in the conference back at Big 12 Media Days back in the summer. They're 6-3 right now. They're going to go bowling, and they're coming in believing. They have a really good rushing attack. What are your thoughts on this game? What are you watching for when the Mountaineers get to Norman on Saturday night?
Yeah, I'm excited about this one because I think it's a pretty unique challenge. I think I look at this West Virginia team and I say, okay, this is probably the best version of West Virginia that Oklahoma's going to be able to see for quite a while. Years past, West Virginia's been good. I don't know that they've been this solid, but and if I remember correctly too, I mean, West Virginia beat Oklahoma last year. Correct?
Yes, yeah, in Morgantown. Yeah. First time they beat them since they've been in the Big 12 was last year.
And now, like, I look at this team, Josh, and I say there's a very realistic opportunity for West Virginia to do that again. I mean, Garrett Green, I'll give him a lot to do. At once he was kind of like a fan favorite in West Virginia, just like the chosen child of that fan base. And it was like everyone else is just kind of like, you know, that's your guy. But he's elevated his game. Obviously, he's an explosive runner of the ball. He can stretch the field vertically. But I'm looking at him and I'm saying, okay, if I'm in that defensive meeting room, I kind of want to blanket the top of my defense and force this guy to complete passes accurately, move the chains consistently. But the thing there, too, is he's got the ability to sit in there and read, although his accuracy may not be outstanding in the middle of the field, because that offensive line's legit. And I think that's what I'm really excited about with this matchup is West Virginia's offensive line and their defensive line, arguably the two strengths of this team. Now, I know that they've had a running back or two be really explosive. I turned on the West Virginia game last weekend for like a quarter, and I saw they had like a freshman running back just going off. And I don't know a ton about that running back room, but I do know a lot about that offensive line. I follow a lot of those guys as recruits. There's a couple NFL players on the front line, and you could say the same for the defensive line. And so Oklahoma's going to be challenged up front. And if you're not winning at the point of attack, I think we've seen that Oklahoma from the front line out, if it's not winning along the front, that then very much trickles back to the rest of the squad. So this is a very fun matchup, man. Like, I don't know a lot of people nationally are grasping how important this game is, but this is kind of like a slugfest coming up. And for both teams, there's a lot at stake. And so, yeah, man, I'm excited about this. There's a couple other wrinkles. Obviously, you guys are going to do the full breakdown coming up here on the pod, but I think I'm most excited to see how Oklahoma plans to attack a team that I think on paper has a very realistic opportunity to give them a scare in Norman.
So what's your feel on it? Does Oklahoma snap this little skid and get back on track on Saturday night, or does it kind of like last year continue to snowball on them a little bit? Do they get back in the win column? What's your game pick? Sooners, Mountaineers?
Yeah, I think that West Virginia is going to come in here, and Neil Brown, the thing that I like about him, Josh, is he's kind of a fiery guy. Like at the beginning of the year when we went to Big 12 Media Days,
yeah,
he was giving everybody the business. You know, he was not happy, to put it lightly, that his team was picked dead last. And my only assumption here is that he's going to try and put another statement on the board in this game. I think West Virginia is going to throw the kitchen sink at him. That being said, Oklahoma to me, like, this is when you got to figure it out. If you don't get it going now, I will happily throw my hand up and at that point just pick against you for the rest of the season. But I'm not going to do it. I'm not going to do it. I think Oklahoma rights the ship. I think Jeff Levy, I know that I'm trying to, like, defend the guy. And last week I said, oh, you know, the last time this play calling fell into question, he went out there and lit it up. Didn't do that. But you're at home. There's a lot at stake. This is for the season. And so for that reason, I'm going to pick the Sooners. I'm going to say Oklahoma wins over West Virginia 34-21. We'll go 34-21.
So you got a push, a very rare push.
Well, I saw the line was at, 12.5 recently. I don't know if that's still out there. So
I see it at 13 right now, but obviously it moves around. Depends on where you look. But you're close. But there you have it. So per Collin Kennedy, Oklahoma gets back in the win column. Going to be a fun game on Saturday night. I think the fact that it's a night game does help. You know, because this just felt like when I left Stillwater last weekend, it just felt like if that thing's at 11 a.m., it's going to be sleepy. Fans are not going to be dialed in at the beginning. The fact that it's at night helps a lot in that area. And talking to players this week, they're certainly disappointed, but I think they're going to be ready to go to try and just stick a losing. I think is kind of a good way to put it. So we'll see what happens on Saturday night. That's it for CK. Collin, appreciate you, sir, as always. We'll catch up with you next week as we get ready for Oklahoma to head to Utah and BYU next weekend. Looking forward to that.
Going to be a lot of fun. Final day for 50% off. I launched the 60% last week. 24/7 called and said, hey, we're going to do a 50% off deal for 2 days to celebrate college basketball and National Signing Day for the sport. I said, well, That's great. Not a ton of OU people are going to even be aware that it's basketball signing day, but hey, 50% off for those OU fans, folks. So come sign up at Sooners Illustrated, half off. That's less than $5 per month to get access to Sooners Illustrated and the entire 24/7 Sports Network. Y'all be safe. Celebrate accordingly out there at that night game. Make sure you get in the stadium for me and then go have some fun. I will see y'all next week.
All right, man. All right, we'll get Tom and James in here now to continue to break down and preview Oklahoma, West Virginia, and also talk about the basketball season openers that were on Monday right here. All right, we now welcome in James D. Jackson, Tom Green into the program. Gentlemen, how are you doing?
Good, man. Good. How about you?
We're back. You know, getting a shot at OU does and see if they can get a win this time.
Yeah, no kidding. It feels like I was just talking to Tom before we started recording that also they won the UCF game, but it didn't feel good. OU fans didn't like it. So it's been about a month since we've come out of a game week where the fans and we feel good about the way the team is playing right now. So we'll see if it changes this weekend. West Virginia's coming in. I talked about it a little bit with Collin just a little bit ago, but you guys remember, obviously, West Virginia was picked last in the conference. Neil Brown was firmly on the hot seat. He was calling guys out, media out at Big 12 Media Days. And here they are. They're 6-3. I mean, the Mountaineers are one of the surprise teams in the country this year. They're 4-2 in conference. They're technically, they're certainly not out of the Big 12 race. Now, nobody thinks that they're probably capable of stacking these wins and doing it, but they're in the thick of things right now. And this game, and you guys can let me know what you think on this, feels sneaky huge for Oklahoma. I mean, they need this game. You're talking about 2 straight losses on the road. You're coming back home. This kind of feels like the tipping point for this season being either fine, you can still get to 10 wins, or kind of a low-key disaster if you lose this game and it gets away from you. This is a kind of large and very important game for Oklahoma this weekend under the lights back in Norman.
Yeah, it's kind of like we talked about the other day on the podcast. It almost feels like an inflection point for the team this season, especially the way those 2 losses kind of happened, like feeling very much like last season's backslide. And now you have a team that, while West Virginia has been a lot better than people expected, it was still picked to finish last in the league. Like, if you lose 3 straight games and that 3rd game is the team that was picked to finish 14th in the Big 12 at home, that's not a good look. Like you said, this game feels a lot bigger than any of us would have imagined it would be 2 months ago.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and you got to think for this team, like the expectations that were set before the season. It seems like, from the media guys and fans, not the coach, because the coach is going to want to win in every game. But the expectations were, 10 wins anyway. The goalposts kind of move a little bit after the Texas win and things like that. And like, okay, maybe this team is a playoff team. One of those. Those conversations were being had. Now it's back to, I think, where everybody thought they were going to be anyway, to 10 wins. Although I had them a little bit higher than that, but other than that, I think it's back to where everybody expecting them to be. So if you do lose this game, you start to fall underachieving, which is not where you want to be going into the SEC next season.
Yeah, especially considering that they were, like kind of reference, James, overachieving just a few weeks ago. That's quite the swing in about a month's time. And this is a scary game for a lot of reasons because West Virginia, what do they have to lose? They have massively succeeded already. Their expectations for this season. They're coming in Norman. They beat OU last year, so they have a little bit of confidence there. I know it's a different Oklahoma team, but still you carry that over. Garrett Green played very well in that game last year in Morgantown. They're playing well. The pressure is all on Oklahoma here. So those are things that scare you. And the fact that West Virginia, which we've talked about with Brent Venables and player stuff this week, are kind of similar to the teams that they've been playing in terms of the way they approach, especially offense-heavy running teams. So from that perspective, it's a little bit of a frightening game for Oklahoma. And we'll get into it here. So let's dive in. I think most people are very interested in, and we've been talking about it on the show the last couple of weeks, the offense. Can the offense fix it? Can the offense figure it out? Jeff Lebby, what's the deal? Obviously, OU fans, he's probably going to be number 1 right now. I think we all thought coming out of the Kansas game in Stillwater, better weather, after the scrutiny of the week before, Dylan Gabriel's going to throw it all over the place, and they're going to have a bounce back day. And while they did throw the ball a lot more, and they actually ran the ball well, which Tom and I talked about on Monday, at the end of the day, 24 points, missed opportunity after missed opportunity in the second half. The last 5 drives of the game, they scored 3 total points, some brutal turnovers, several brutal penalties. Now you go against West Virginia defense that's pretty balanced, a good defensive line. What are some expectations for Oklahoma offensively right now? Because it feels like the OU offense is kind of busted at the moment. And we know they have guys, but is it just simply that without Angelo Anthony, this offense just isn't that good? It's just an okay offense. Or is there a room here for them to turn things around? What do you guys think?
I mean, I think they can turn things around. I don't want to downplay the loss of Angelo Anthony because it has been very noticeable, and it's something that Brent Venables, pointed out again on Tuesday when we were talking to him, like kind of unprompted, like, yeah, like this was a pretty major loss. But, talking to players this week, they feel they're so close to just like putting it together. Like the difference between a 3-point loss and like a 15-point win for them is just a handful of plays, it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
But the biggest thing has obviously the turnovers have been killer the last 2 games, 6 of them. 4 of those have come on first downs offensively, which is just brutal, including a few after like big plays. Obviously the 49-yard pass to Nick Anderson, and then you get the fumble, you get a 15-yard run by Gavin Sawchuk, then an interception going the other way. It's tough, but I think one of the biggest things is just their execution in the fourth quarter these last 2 games has been awful.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, you look at the fourth quarters, they have 2 turnovers, both fumbles, just 7 first downs. They're 1 of 7 on third downs. Their fourth quarter drive chart the last 2 weeks is disgusting. Against Kansas, 4 plays punt, 4 plays touchdown on a short field because of Billy Bowman's interception.
Right.
You only have to go 14 yards. 3 plays for -2 yards, punt. 6 plays, end of game. Against Oklahoma State, 4 plays punt, 1 play fumble, 6 plays field goal, 5 plays turnover on downs.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Ugh.
it's gross. And, obviously they need to execute better in the fourth quarter, but it was kind of interesting to listen to Dylan Gabriel talk about it on Monday night. It's like, yeah, we're a better team in quarters 1, 2, and 3. Fourth quarter execution, obviously they still want to be better in the fourth quarter, but you're not putting yourself in situations where it can be a 1-score game late in those moments when you may be not maybe your best. So they just have a lot of things to clean up, but again, they feel like they're really close. It's just the details, like Brent Venables said, this team is not good enough to not be good in the margins. Like They can't get away with those mistakes. They've caught up to them the last 2 weeks.
And I think that's the difference here, right? I mean, you asked us how we feel about it, Josh, and it's kind of frustrating, but also you kind of gave a little hope because it seems like it's just OU beating OU at this point. They're just having their mistakes that are small at times, but over time it builds up to where it's catastrophic. And then then there's a chance for a call not to go your way. Things like that, getting a penalty that probably wasn't deserved on your side. Those things are compounding and coming together, and that's really what's hurting them. So as Tom just named off all of the numbers there, I mean, that's literally what it is. OU is, as we said, OU is going to be favored in every game after Texas, and they have been. And it's just they're just beating themselves at this point. No team has done something that out-schemed them or really beat them up in the game. It's just them beating themselves, having errors here and there, which is just caught up to them. As Brent Venables said, as Tom said, it's just caught up to them at this point. And so you see what needs to be fixed. Maybe if you don't have those false start penalties, maybe you can not fumble the ball on the snap. Maybe do those little things right. And then it feels like a whole different season. That's the situation it is right now.
Yeah, and talking to players, like especially Andrew Rahm made a point of it. I think Gavin Sawchuk and Drake Stoops made points of it too. It's like, yeah, it's incredibly frustrating that they've kind of like just fumbled away these golden opportunities to still be in the driver's seat in the Big 12, but also be in the playoff conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
But they like Andrew Rahm said, it's almost reassuring to a point because like it's not like they're getting blasted by opposing teams. It's just they're stepping on their own foot and messing up. Like these are things that they feel are correctable for them. So that's why there's kind of like this, they take it with a grain of salt. They feel like they can turn things around and, finish the season strong and not fade down the stretch like they did last year. But they're running out of time to correct these issues.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, those fourth quarter numbers too are extra startling when you think back to the beginning of the season. We're talking about how well they were finishing games. That was a conversation early in the year. You think of SMU in the fourth quarter. Just kind of they ended the game on a run the first 4 or 5 weeks, if you guys remember that. It's like they scored Iowa State. They blew them out of the park in the second half after it was a close game for a while. And so just to see that vast turnaround to where now they're the team that's getting hammered late is you're wondering what happened. And we talked about it a lot the last couple of weeks, but it feels like last year because that's what they were so bad at last year was finishing games. And a big part of that we thought last year was that there was no depth and that these guys are playing every snap, especially on defense. They're just the linebackers, Stutzman, Nguebu, Sean White, those guys are playing every snap. We thought that was going to be different this year. And so far it was through 5, 6, 7 games. The last couple of games, it hasn't seemed that way. It's gone backwards. They're back to being bad in close games. They're 2-7 in one-score games now the last 2 years. So, finding a way to like you said, Tom, earlier, get better on the margins because they just don't have the skill and the talent to just run away from everybody. Now you got West Virginia this weekend. Defensively, like I mentioned, not a clear, obvious weakness for them, at least on paper, statistically. They're 55th in scoring, 62nd in passing, 56th in rushing. They're kind of just solid across the board. Not amazing across the board, but solid, good defensive line. Is there an area in particular that you're looking for Oklahoma? Is it, hopefully build on the run game, try to get more receivers going? Certainly Andrew Ram's going to have a big spotlight on him after, a couple of fumbled snaps. I mean, how much was it his fault? The first one, I don't know, but still 2 fumbled snaps. Is there an area in particular that you guys are watching for offensively this weekend?
Go ahead, James.
That was the one thing I forgot to mention too, and what I was talking about last time, them beating themselves. It's like all of a sudden you're running the ball well. So you're running the ball well, and you're playing good defense. In football, you're supposed to win games like that
with a good quarterback.
Yeah, with a good quarterback. Like, it's just supposed to work out for you. And so they've had these last 2 games where they've run the ball really well. And I think, you want to build on that because that's still a recipe for success as long as you're not hurting yourself with penalties and, just late game fumbles and turnovers and things like that. Once you get away from that, just running the football is enough on its own to really do just fine because you still have Dylan Gabriel, who was a Heisman candidate for a little while there, that can, get you out of sticky situations when you need him. So I think just getting back to that, yes, you want to build on the run game and just build on that. That's pretty much what it is now.
Yeah, I think to me, it's not just like continuing to build on the run game, but getting Dylan Gabriel back involved in the run game. That's when this offense has been at its best this season, when he's been able to add a little bit extra dimension to that. And, again, you're not asking him to run for 100 yards, even though, he did that one game. But if you can get, 60 yards out of him, get him a handful of carries, just do something to keep the defense a little bit more honest and off balance. I think it just adds something to this offense that makes them a little bit more dangerous. But I do want to backtrack, just a minute. I know we've, kind of gone over the offense's issues late in games, but it hasn't been all on them. The defense, for as good as it's been this season, it has been a little shaky in these last 3 games late in the fourth quarter. I mean, even the UCF game that they won, they gave up a 75-yard touchdown drive in the final minutes there that gave UCF a chance to tie on the 2-point conversion. Then Kansas, you give up an 80-yard game-winning touchdown drive in the fourth quarter. Last week against Oklahoma State, you give up a 97-yard touchdown drive for the go-ahead score. I mean, it goes back to what we've heard them say over and over again since the offseason. It's about complementary football. Mm-hmm. And when one side falters, it narrows the margin for the other side. And they're just not playing complementary football right now. So there's blame to go around on, to everybody. But I know like the offense is kind of the easy option to scapegoat just because of the issues there are a little bit more glaring.
Definitely.
Yeah, I'm glad you noted the Dylan Gabriel running part of it too, Tom. I mean, obviously we talked about it after the Texas game. That was a huge reason why they won that game. In Bedlam, 4 carries for -7 yards. I looked it up because I had to look it up real quick because I knew it was nothing. Where did that go? Where did that element go? That just utilizing his legs a little more, it became more and more of a factor. It was a factor in Kansas. He ran for 3 touchdowns in that game, right? If I remember right. Mm-hmm. And then in Bedlam, it just wasn't a lot. Now you're running the ball with Gavin and Tawi, but still, why, an element that worked so much to your benefit, they got away from. And it kind of goes to what we've been talking about the whole time, where it's like there's elements of the offense that is working and they seem to get away from it, or they go too hard on something else. It's never had a good flow the whole year. And the rhythm to it's been just off. James, did you have something?
No, I was saying I was agreeing with what Tom said. I mean, that's exactly right. Just get Dylan Gabriel back in there.
Yeah, I was going to say it kind of goes back to what we were talking about on the last podcast, Josh. But it's like the offense. Like you look at the numbers overall, the offense has been very good. It's kind of situational stuff, but it just feels like Jeff Lebby is having kind of a difficult time striking the right balance at the right time with the run pass, and just how to get it all to work. Because you look back at the Kansas game, it's like, okay, Dylan Gabriel only attempts 19 passes, but he runs for 3 touchdowns. Then you flip it to Oklahoma State, he's back to throwing it all over the yard, but like you said, only like 4 carries for -7 yards, and one of those is a sack, or 2 of those are sacks rather. But it's just like you said, kind of getting away from what's working to try to adjust. It's almost like overcorrecting.
Yeah,
is what it feels like.
And that's the thing too. This team is only one drive away in each game. Like just one drive. Just you get a turnover, get a first down, or get a touchdown. It's just one drive that would have defined the game, and you're sitting in an entirely different spot. It's just that close.
When Brent Venables said on Tuesday at his press conference there was one position that was severely lacking, it was tight ends, right?
Yeah,
tight ends, because that position is giving OU nothing. And I was harping on that a lot early in the year. And frankly, I just stopped because it just became clear that wasn't going to be a factor. But it is still crazy that we're 9 games in, and Oklahoma does not have a tight end who is alive out there. I mean, obviously, Austin Stogner is the guy that they're using. He's playing all the snaps. He hasn't been a factor in the passing game all year, which I was way off. I thought after seeing what Braden Willis did last year and seeing Austin Stogner when he was at OU before he transferred to South Carolina, I didn't think he was going to be Braden Willis, but I thought he would be a factor. He hasn't been a factor at all. And obviously in Stillwater, the blocking was not where it needed to be. The tight end room is kind of sneaky killing OU. And we haven't talked about it that much the last month or so, but not having a legitimate option to throw the ball to. I mean, last year, Braden Willis was maybe the most consistent weapon of the offense. It was either him or Marvin Mims. And to not have anything is certainly hurting this team. And that's something to keep an eye on moving forward. Obviously, the recruiting at the high level there. Devon Mitchell's coming in next year, but that doesn't do you any good for now. And, they just need somebody to step up there. That's been something that's certainly been hurting OU.
Yeah, I'll admit when I know I told you guys this on Tuesday, but when Brent Venables made that remark, it took me a minute to think about what position it was, because I don't even think about the tight ends with this team.
You forget they have tight ends.
Yeah. But yeah, no, that is clearly like the glaring weakness, because I know a lot of people might point to like kicking, but like Brent Venables was up there stumping for Zach Schmidt, and his confidence in him, and kind of trying to back it up with some numbers that, hey, even though he's had his issues, like he's not that bad.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, but yeah, like after a minute, it's like it's pretty clear that tight end is where they're not getting enough. And again, this team is just not good enough to not be good enough in the margins. Like you can't get away with being that weak in a spot was very good for you last year. I mean, we heard it in the preseason. Brent Venables referred to Braden Willis as one of his all-time favorite players. It's like clearly they like that position, and they thought they were going to have more in Austin Stogner, but it just has not come to fruition. And Blake Smith, I mean, he made some plays early in the season, but we've barely seen him the last few weeks. Mm-hmm. And I think that's just kind of an indictment of the position as a whole, where you're not getting a lot from Austin Stogner, but you don't have many other options, or even healthy options at that, to give other guys, the trust that you are giving Austin Stogner right now.
Yeah, I do think Caden Helms could have been a factor here. Obviously went down his battle injuries, throughout the summer and into the season. I think that certainly has hindered them. But yeah, longest reception, I believe, for a tight end this year is still Cade McIntyre, the freshman in the opener.
Mm-hmm.
Bad. Defensively for Oklahoma, let me know if this sounds familiar. They're facing another high-powered rushing attack that's got a good offensive line. That's been the case last several weeks. West Virginia, 7th in the country in rushing. So yet again, a team that can run the ball, just like UCF, just like Kansas, just like Oklahoma State. What do those three teams have in common? They all gave OU massive trouble, and almost all three beat OU. Obviously, two of them did. West Virginia does not throw the ball particularly well, but they score it because they run it. Garrett Green is a multi-faceted QB, can really move around. Gave OU fits last year. West Virginia beat OU in Morgantown last year. The first time West Virginia had ever beat OU since they joined the Big 12 about a decade ago. And now they're coming in today, same QB, or this weekend, I should say, same QB, run the ball all over the place. What worries you here defensively for Oklahoma, and how do you kind of scout that side of the ball for this one this weekend?
Before I get into what worries me, I want to say the reassurance we should have, right? Now, they faced the top two backs that they're going to see already, Jonathan Brooks and Ollie Gordon. They've seen the top of the rushing attacks, and they held them to a pretty good number. So I think watching the OU defense do that should give them some confidence going into this game, because it's not like you mentioned the numbers about West Virginia, but it's not something that you were like worried about a week before like you were with Ollie Gordon. You were already trying to get prepared for what he could do. So that gives you some assurance there. Now, the only worrisome aspect you could have if they start doing some eye candy here and there and guys just miss their assignments, which, Brent Venables kind of talked about as well, just like having motions and things like that. You may think this is your assignment, but you get mixed up and that was your assignment over there. That's where you can get hurt. But they've shown over this season, and especially in those last couple of games, that they can stop a good rushing attack. And if not stop them, hold them enough to where you have a good chance of still winning the game.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to stopping the run in this game. I mean, that's what West Virginia does well. I think minimizing Garrett Green is going to be huge. Obviously, like Josh said, he kind of carved them up last year. I think it was 119 yards and 2 touchdowns. He's got one 100-yard rushing game this year. It was against Oklahoma State. He's got 427 yards, 8 touchdowns, averaging 5.5 yards per carry. So, like, again, a mobile quarterback that has given Oklahoma problems in the past. Like, we've heard this story before. Let's see how they answer. I mean, I think the defense has done pretty well against the run, all things considered. I think if they can, kind of contain Garrett Green, they'll be in pretty good shape in this one. But it just comes down to being able to stop the run.
Yeah. Well, let's go ahead and pick the game. Collin's got 34-21, Oklahoma. I got the spread right now at 13, the way I'm looking at it. So that would be a push for CK. I don't know what that does to the standings. We'll worry about that later. What do we think? Does Oklahoma end this losing skid? They get back on track, or does the tumble continue? Who wants to start it off?
Yeah, I was first last time, so somebody's got to go this time.
Yeah, I mean, I think they're gonna get back on track. Like, playing at home, they've been a lot better at home this season. Like I said the other day, I think playing under the lights is going to give this game a little bit more juice than it might have had. And I think this team, I asked a couple players like Dylan Gabriel, like, is it hard to not get in your own head after 1-score losses again?
Sure.
Because you thought you learned that lesson. It's like, yeah, it's frustrating, but like, again, they feel like everything's correctable. I think they're going to get back on track in this one. I'm going to go 38-24.
38-24. We're all going to be in the same ballpark, I think.
Yeah. Now, I know Tom mentioned that OU's been good at home. They've been good at home all time. Like, it's over time of what they've done. They've always had a really good record at home. It's just like, it's very hard to go into Norman and beat the Sooners. And I know they got some things going for them. Like, they got their alternate uniforms, and Unity uniforms are coming out. So give a little bit more juice to it, give a little more excitement for the players to have another look out there, especially as you get more recruits to come in and watch a night game, which is also a better situation because you get all day to prepare and things like that. It all kind of sneak. I mean, it goes both ways for West Virginia too, but I think, having all that gives Oklahoma some more juice to get fired up for this game that they absolutely need at this point in the season. Now, I like what Collin was at. Like, I really do. So I think I'll go 35-24. I'm going to say 35-24, around that area. A really good win for OU. I think they get it done
but they
against
don't
West Virginia. but they don't cover. I don't know if you can.
Yeah.
I don't know if you have that much confidence in them right now because we don't know. Like if Denny Stutzman plays, that number changes a lot for me. If Gentry Williams is out there, the number play, changes a lot. But I don't know if they're out there. That's the thing. We don't know exactly where they are, but that's where I like the number at right now.
Yeah, I think Oklahoma wins. The spread feels big to me at 13. I'm gonna go close game. I'm gonna go 31-24. So we got 24. But Oklahoma's offense just hasn't looked great the last few weeks. It could easily explode for 50 or 60. Jeff Levy's shown that sometimes that just happens. It always work in one day, but then other days it's not. So I'm gonna say the Sooners play well defensively, and they just kind of outlast West Virginia here. I think it's gonna be a competitive game. I think Neil Brown's got them playing well. Like I said, they got nothing to lose. They're gonna come in loose and just hoping to try and spring an upset here. Where Oklahoma's gonna, if this game's close, they're gonna feel pressure. This is gonna be a little bit of a tense atmosphere, I think, late in this game if it's close, because this is like Tom said earlier, major inflection point on the season here. I mean, you can salvage things if you win this, but if you lose, it is time for some hard questions coming out of Norman. So I go 31-24. I think the Sooners win, but the spread feels a little large for me. What do you guys think of the Unity uniforms, by the way? You like those? I asked Collin earlier. You like the grays?
I mean, they're fine.
So no.
The thing is the recruits really like them.
That's what I said. Yeah, that's the important thing.
They're always taking pictures in those. Yeah. I like the other ones. I like the other alternate uniforms better. Now I want to get into the name because I know Josh has been getting on me about that, but
the
I don't know which
ones.
Huh?
The anthracite ones?
No, that's
the Unity.
That's the Unity.
The Bring the Wood, yeah. Roughneck, whatever they were called.
Is it Roughneck or I always thought it was rough? I don't know what it is, but that's
Rough
those
Rider,
are the ones,
maybe.
Yeah, those are the ones
right.
I really like.
I don't know.
The ones with their little design in them. Those are
got
pretty
a couple
cool.
Nice alternates, but I think these are all right. I think these are pretty cool. I like the helmet. I think the helmet's cool.
Mm-hmm.
They look better out on the field, And last year was a day game too, so it's be a night game.
I think the night game will make it look a lot better.
Little extra juice to it. Yeah.
Night game it'll look cooler at night. The little dark gray situation
for sure. Well, look forward to it. We're all going to be there on Saturday night. Oklahoma at West Virginia. Should be a fun ball game. Before we go, real quick, won't spend too much time on it, but a little bit of hoops. Hoop season tipped off on Monday. We'll start with the women. They play Wichita State. James, you were there. I watched the game at home. I had it on. Weird game. They were down a half and then just destroyed Wichita State in the second half. What was kind of your main takeaway, I guess, coming out of that opener for Jenny Bronchek, who's got a brand new team, obviously, with all the players gone from last year?
Well, that was the big thing. It was like the trio that's been there for so long. What were they going to look like without them? What were they going? What was the Sooners going to look like? Because that's a lot of the reasons why this team is ranked as high as they are because of what they've accomplished over the last couple of years. And now it seemed like at the start of that game, it was just tough. It was just tough going. They didn't really figure. They couldn't figure out who was supposed to be where are we at in situations like that. And right at the end of the first quarter, I would say, is where they started making their run. They started figuring things out. And then by the time the third quarter came around, it was just like they couldn't be stopped. Wichita State had no answer for them. And OU was able to just shut down all the top shooting that Wichita State was putting up, and it just a blowout from there. 35-11 in that third quarter was how much Oklahoma outscored them. And so that just shows you. And it's a lot of it came from the bench unit. Like, going to the bench and going to going to women like, Audrey Jones and others that way and coming off the bench and really helping support that unit, because 43 points off the bench can win you a lot of games. And that's what they ended up doing with that unit out there. And it was a good turnaround win. It showed a lot of fight from the Sooners. I asked Coach Jenny about that afterwards. It showed a lot of fight. It showed them exactly what they need to do from now on. Just building on that is the key now, because you got a good team coming in today. And I think you'll know that tonight.
Yeah, tonight they at Ole Miss tonight. That's I think a top 15 team, Ole Miss.
Mm-hmm.
So a tough test here early for that squad. We'll see what they can do tonight. As for the men, Tom and I were at their opener on Monday night. They played Central Michigan. Looked pretty good. I mean, Central Michigan stinks. I think they're outside the top 300 at Ken Palm or something like that to start the year. So they're bad, but you did what you're supposed to do. I mean, they whipped them. They won by 30 points. Tom, we're not going to learn a lot about this team until they get into better competition, obviously into Big 12 play. But as far as first time out, they put 89 on the board. Some of these new guys look pretty good. They have actual size inside with John Hughley. They look pretty good. I mean, we're not going to learn a whole lot, like I said, till later. But as far as game one, night one, pretty good, pretty solid.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the biggest things is just that the style of play was more aesthetically pleasing.
Yes.
I mean, you look back at last year's opener, they scored 51 points and lost to Sam Houston State.
With that, yeah.
This year, they got off to a little bit of a slow start. It was kind of back and forth there the first 5 or 6 minutes. But then the defense kicked in and they started to turn the defense into offense. I think they got 11 or 12 straight stops, went on a 13-0 run to kind of just create some distance and, kept Central Michigan at bay the rest of the way. Coming out of halftime, they were, it was a little bit of a slog offensively, but then all of a sudden they just pushed it to 30 and it's like, okay, took care of business. I was really impressed with, Javion McCollum. He looks like a really good transfer portal pickup. Again, I want to see, how his game translates against better competition, obviously, because he's coming from a mid-major program in Siena. So, as competition picks up, I want to see how that kind of carries over for him. Otega Owe was, really solid across the board. You can tell that he's been working on his shot throughout the offseason. John Hughley, like you mentioned, impressive footwork inside. I think he finished with 10 points, 5 rebounds. And then, Jalen Moore really impressed me too. It's just kind of like that energy guy for this team. Like you can just tell he's an athlete.
He's looking to dunk on people all the time, which I appreciate that.
Yeah, so I mean, there was lots to like from that opener, but like you said, until they get against better competition, we're not going to know, just like how much better this team is going to be this season. But yeah, I mean, couldn't ask for a better opener for them.
Yeah, no, Jalen Moore is going to be fun. But yeah, they look good. It was one game, but they look good. And like I said a couple times, to just kind of talking about the team in general, they're at least going to be much more watchable, like you said, much more aesthetically pleasing. They can play with a lot more pace. And I'm curious how those rotations get slimmed down too as we go. Because Porter Moser said he only likes to play 7-8 guys. Right now they got about 10 guys or so that can play. So curious to see how that gets slimmed down. Luke Northweather hit a 3. I also heard a lot about him leading up to the start of the season. So good start. We talked about it. Not going to know a whole lot till we get better competition. That's not going to happen on Friday. Mississippi Valley State next up. Not exactly going to be on national radar, that game, but that's coming up on Friday next up for the men. All right, I think that's it. We'll be in Norman Saturday night, Oklahoma, West Virginia. Be sure to subscribe, Oklahoma247sports.com. Like Collin said, special deal running right now, 50% off. I'm not sure when that ends. It's going to be probably pretty soon. So
I think tomorrow.
Friday. All right, so get on it. Now's the time.
48-hour flash sale.
We got a little bit more going on football season. Then obviously transfer portal season kicks up, and basketball season just getting going. So great time. Hop in, join aboard. Give me a fun rest of the season, both in football and getting basketball going. Oklahoma247sports.com. Be sure to subscribe to the YouTube channel as well for your home of all OU football, basketball, and other sports, press conferences, things like that. We'll catch you guys Saturday night from Norman to be back on Monday for the next edition of Sooners Illustrated Podcast to recap it all as the Sooners take on the Mountaineers of West Virginia. That's it for Tom Green, James E. Jackson, Collin Kennedy earlier. I'm Josh Callaway. We'll see you guys Monday for the next edition of the Sooners Illustrated Podcast.
See you.